Law number 1, the law of strategy. Employer brand is strategy, not tactics, though you'll still need tactics. For a very long time, when it came to warfare, the largest army won. It was simple math. Each soldier was about as effective as any other, so having more meant you would win. Every once in a while, someone would defy the odds. Rather than array their people in a typical way, they would try something different. Maybe they put their weakest people in the front instead of their strongest. Maybe they would employ trickery to make it seem like they had more people than they actually did. Maybe it was a feint to the right and a strong attack to the left. Sometimes it was as simple as choosing the right battleground. Like when 300 Spartans faced off against thousands by forcing that larger army through a mountain pass, negating that army's strength and making the battle very much a one-on-one affair. This is strategy, making decisions about how to use your resources to achieve maximum impact. Whether it's against an opponent across the battlefield or the dozens of companies against whom you compete for talent, you can and should make choices about how, who, when, and where you fight. But classic recruiting feels a lot more like medieval warfare, where one army of mostly farmers and serfs holds swords and pikes fighting against another army, mostly again of farmers and serfs with similar tools. Line them up, let them rip. We look at recruiters in a similar vein. Few are trained in recruiting in any kind of way, and they all have the same databases and outreach tools as every other recruiter in every other company. We just line them up and let them rip. It seems strange to think that we've optimized around this idea that recruiting teams get better when they get bigger or get the latest tools. And so TA leaders fight their fight in terms of headcount and budget. Employer branding, at its core, is strategy. Who do we want to hire? Why do we want to hire them? What do we offer? Why would they want that? What will they get out of working here? Who is looking for the stuff that we offer? Where are they now, and what do they get now? How are we different from other companies? Where do they look for information about jobs? How do we talk to people outside the funnel versus those within it? What policies and news can we leverage to tell our story in a more credible way? This is not lining them up and letting them rip. This is thinking about the creation of an advantage without finding more resources. This is about maximizing existing resources, sometimes by making the individual recruiter more effective, sometimes by seeing a bigger picture and creating resources from outside TA, and sometimes by defining and building a position that just makes the company more attractive to the right people. Employer branding works best when it starts with that strategy and builds the tactics and plans that execute on the strategy. Sure, employer branding is building LinkedIn posts. That's a tactic. And writing better job postings. That's a tactic. And implementing a better referral program. Tactics. And implementing your first CRM. Tactic. And training hiring managers to use the brand talking points that attract great talent. That's another tactic. But those tactics, without the strategy, are noise. Like your favorite book, with all the chapters put in a different order. The words and the sentences are exactly the same, but suddenly the book is confusing rather than enthralling. Why this works? Recruiters are tasked with requisitions. They do the crucial work of translating hiring manager needs and desires to the marketplace. They source, engage, attract, persuade, build relationships, and shepherd great people who will make the business run. As such, they often feel the effects of this lack of strategy. For example, they're going up against the biggest companies and they're not very interesting, or they're going against other companies and sound just like them, or no one knows who they are, and no one has a reason to open those outreach emails, or the career site's out of date, whatever it is. Sometimes they can diagnose the lack of strategy, like who's in charge of making sure we're known in the market? Is there any central support for this tool? Or is every recruiter, gone off by themselves? That sort of thing. But ultimately, they're too busy swimming to build themselves a boat. At the same time, TA leadership is busy playing defense, protecting the TA team from hiring manager frustrations while translating TA frustrations into potential new resources. And HR is focused on creating an equitable process for everybody, but not helping the company stand out in a crowded talent marketplace. And then there's marketing, who's rightly focused on more leads, not better leads, which is anathema to everything recruiting is all about. You can only put one person in a given role, so you've got to get the best. And broad strategic thinking about the consumer market is often, maybe correctly, seen as more valuable than imperfect strategy around the talent market. This leaves a gap for employer branders to own, to see the bigger picture, to create deeper relationships across the company, to look at the talent market as a whole and define an interesting position within it, to build the content and marketing that defends that position. That is where employer branding lives. Where this falls apart. As employer branding is a young field, it is often staffed with less experienced marketers and recruiters. There's no training ground for employer branding skills other than, well, being a junior employer brander. Leadership often looks skeptically when a 26-year-old tries to develop a strategy for a function that requires 4 to 7% of the entire operating budget. And so their employer brander is reduced to a tactical role. That employer brander will be tasked with pretty words and pretty pictures rather than the strategic work that will yield the most benefit. Example. In 1999, a company that, well, pretty much no one had heard of in Cary, North Carolina, made the cover of Fast Company because it offered what seemed like, at the time, an insane amount of perks and benefits to its staff. Among other things, SAS offered meals, snacks, childcare, healthcare, and even a workout facility for free, on site. And because they took care of their people, word spread. And the people who liked that kind of support would all but fall over each other to apply. A strategy of abundant benefits led to hiring great talent at a far lower recruiting cost. Now, could they have offered less perks and saved a little money? Sure. But would that company now be worthy of a national magazine cover? No. Their strategy was to be better at one thing than anyone else, which effectively created its own gravitational pull for talent. On the other side of the coin, you've got Enterprise Holdings. Now, by hiring entry-level talent almost exclusively, they can hire en masse and at a very low cost. The budget saved gets poured into its training and development teams to make sure that there's enough raw materials to turn those new hires into amazing managers, salespeople, and workers. It's a strategy of build, don't buy. So, what is your talent strategy? And how will you array your resources to create maximum impact?